Let's talk Anthony Black, 2023 NBA draft prospect. I'm going to be going into the finer details of every strength and weakness that I noted while watching his game, while still keeping this at a fairly time efficient manner. Just the quick write ups and hit ups on what you need to know on a broad scale with Anthony Black. I'm talking about a guard wing hybrid here out of Arkansas. He's a freshman, still 19 years old, and he's pretty well built for his projected NBA role. 6'5" with the 6'7" wingspan, 210 pounds. That's what he measured in at the combine. So pretty, solid length, solid height, pretty well built. And he's kind of filled out that frame. So you like to see that just off the jump. But getting into his strengths now, the first thing that I want to talk about is the passing and playmaking. And that's one of the things that really immediately pops up for Black on the offensive end. I think it's pretty obvious he's kind of operates with a bit more of a pass first mindset. Let's get other guys involved. Uh, Already immediately, like, the upside is high for him as a passer because of just the height that he possesses. Guys that can pass with that height and that length, it's enticing in terms of court vision and the different roles they can play, and maybe occasionally posting up, whatever it may be. Black really didn't do that much at Arkansas, but I think he's a high upside passer with the selfless mindset. And you see all these passing versatility flashes. I'll get into the pick and roll stuff because I think that's where he's at his best. But the lob passes, outside of a few that went array, he seems very comfortable with that. When he gets into the lane, he's driving to the hoop, some really fun dump off passes and wraparound passes and a lot of fun cross court passes, even very much a lot of it off the dribble, live dribble action. So you love to see a lot of that. I don't think he's an elite processor in general. There are times where he's a bit late with the read. There are times where he misses something. I'll kind of get into his turnover issues when I talk about the weaknesses, but I think his processor is still very good, especially for a 19-year-old. So the court vision there, the processing is there. And as I kind of just alluded to, I think it takes another level when he's in the pick and roll. Just his ability to just manipulate a defense in the pick and roll. That's somewhere where I think his processor jumps up a notch or two, and it's truly elite stuff. Hardly ever really makes mistakes in the pick and roll. He plays with the perfect pace, too. Pace is important in the pick and roll. You don't want to rush into these sets. Some young guards will do that, and they'll make that mistake where they get the screen and they immediately rush downhill. They don't even give their big man time to roll to the basket and put the ultimate stress on the defense. Instead, they rush to the hoop. They put themselves in a bad position. Black plays with the perfect pace every single rep, every single time. It's a beautiful thing to see. And not only that, but like his handle's good, operating through the lane. He didn't really turn the ball over in that regard. When especially again when operating in the pick and roll, and he knows when to reject screens, which is an important thing. So just in terms of reading his guy, reading that on-ball defender that is getting screened, Black does it pretty much to a T. He knows when it's an appropriate time to reject the screen. He knows when it's an appropriate time to use the screen. He does it with the perfect pace. He reads the pick and roll perfectly. He operates in the pick and roll extremely, extremely well. I love his pick and roll game. It's kind of teach tape stuff. It's really, really fun. It's awesome. The contact finishing is up next. He dealt with really bad spacing at Arkansas. The Razorbacks, terrible spacing. The paint's pretty much always clogged. But Anthony Black didn't really matter for him. He finished well. I think 59% was his statistic at the rim, which isn't a bad number at all for a 19-year-old college guard who, again, was dealing with terrible spacing. Like, he takes long, powerful strides to the hoop. He's not afraid of the contact. He will attack the chest of the opposing defender. He will finish through contact. It doesn't fear him, and it kind of plays into the next bullet point of free throw generation. When you're not afraid of contact, you're going to draw that contact, and you're going to get to the free throw line. But I think it's more than just not being afraid of contact for Anthony Black as to why his free throw rate was so high. I also like a lot of what he does in the lane when driving to the hoop. Like, he does a good job using his handle and using these pick and rolls to get his defender on his back hip and quote unquote put them in jail. That's kind of the saying. It just puts the defender at a disadvantageous spot. So Black can use that as leverage and use pump fakes and kind of hesitation moves to really get them lunging on his back, and then he can throw up a shot and he can get to the free throw line. I thought he did that very well too. So it's not just contact finishing and attacking contact. That's not the only reason Black had a high free throw rate. I also think there are some nuanced things he does in terms of, again, kind of putting his defender in jail that he does a very good job with. And then off the ball on offense, Black is a very effective player as well. The shooting is an issue, and I'm going to get to that. And I think when people hear somebody struggles as a shooter, they immediately just assume, well, he can't be an off-ball player in the league. He can't be effective there. That isn't true at all, because Anthony Black is very good everywhere else off the ball. Just in terms of, I think these guys that struggle as shooters are just flat out non-shooting threats. It's very important that you know when to cut to the hoop when you have a teammate slashing. It's very important to make yourself a threat in that regard, because oftentimes if you're a non-shooting threat, your man will tag and will help at the rim when your teammate is slashing. And now all of a sudden you're just standing out there with no shooting gravity, not really doing anything. But if you cut to the hoop and you hit the right lane and you time it up correctly, now all of a sudden you're an outlet and you're a real option. And all of a sudden you could be getting hit with the dump off pass and you've got an easy 2 points. Black does that beautifully. He knows when to do it. He knows when the appropriate timing is to cut to the hoop. He knows how to make himself available. He finds the right open space. It's an awesome thing to watch. You can also use him as an inverted screener. We've seen these NBA teams love to use these guards, these ones, these twos, even these threes as screeners to get these guards involved in pick and roll actions and to get them switched on to opposing ball handlers and to kind of create mismatches. Black can be very effective in this role because he's 210 pounds. He's got a very filled out frame at 6'5". And he screens well. He's a good screener. And the other thing is he knows when to roll and he kind of understands how to roll. I like him especially off like pin downs, not even just traditional pick and roll, but like pin downs and like exit screens. I thought he did a really good job not only setting those, but then also just kind of lulling his defender to sleep and then cutting to the rim for an easy 2 backdoor. He knows how to catch his defender asleep, essentially. On the offensive glass, he's great as well. This is a really good rebounder in general, whether Black's playing the 1, the 2, the 3. He's going to give you a rebounding boost at any one of those 3 positions, but especially on the offensive glass. I think he's an even better offensive rebounder than he is a defensive rebounder. Just has a nose for the offensive glass. He averaged like at least, I think, 1 putback per game, which again, for his position is very, very impressive. So I like his nose for the ball on the glass. I like the hustle. I like the effort. It's really hard not to like that. But again, his feel just as an off-ball player is so high, and there's so many things that he does well. On top of that, the passing. This is the last thing that I'll add for off-ball feel. I talked about how good his passing was off live dribble and stuff like that. He's one of the best off-ball passers in this class as well. Always will hit that extra pass. So that's the thing. Like, even though he's kind of a non-shooting threat right now, not a great shooter, if you kick it to him in the corner, and maybe he can kind of drive into the middle of the lane, like he can make those extra passes. He can kind of be an outlet in that sense. So Anthony Black, even though the shooting's not really there right now, everything else is off the ball. And that's why I think he could still be a very effective off-ball player in the NBA on the offensive end. Now let's get to the defense. His on-ball defensive versatility is extremely, extremely enticing. This was one of the better point of attack defenders in college basketball last year. He's extremely pesky and engaged at the point of attack. He has the length to be pesky, and he has enough foot speed to keep up with most guards. And on top of that, he has the size to be very switchable and switch on to multiple positions. So Anthony Black is going to be very switchable at the next level. I'm not really concerned about that. And on top of it, he's going to be very effective doing so because he's so engaged at the point of attack. He's so pesky there, and he's very, very good in that regard. But his off-ball defense is just as impressive. Doesn't offer much help side rim protection, which is something that is just one of the most important skills for an off-ball defender. But also keep in mind, Anthony Black, this is a guard-wing hybrid we're talking about. Not many guard-wing hybrids are offering you much help side rim protection anyway. Where Black really succeeds is he's always on his P's and Q's with the team rotations off-ball. moving off ball, being in the right spot. He's always there. He's always communicating. He's always rotating to the right spot. He knows where he needs to be, and he's always there. And on top of that, he takes calculated risks. He racks up steals by jumping passing lanes. But this isn't a player that's high risk, high reward. He's not jumping a ton of passing lanes, but also getting beat on a ton of backdoor cuts. Black just racked up a ton of steals, jumping passing lanes. Yet on the flip side, he hardly got beat. So it's like you're getting the reward without really giving anything up. So I love Anthony Black's defense. I think he's legitimately one of the best defensive prospects in this year's class. And it's because I love both the on-ball defensive versatility and just how he is as a off-ball defender as well. So you love a lot of that with Anthony Black. But now let's get to the weaknesses. The first one is shooting. That's going to be something you hear all the time with Anthony Black. The shooting, the shooting, the shooting. He's not a non-shooting threat, but he is very unreliable in that regard. He shot just 30% from three last season. And when we look at the indicators, the three biggest indicators for me for a shooting prospect are how do the mechanics look? How is your touch in the lane and around the rim? And what are your free throw numbers? Those are three of the most indicative indicators, I guess, that you could point to for how a shooter will develop in the NBA and as the years go on. When I look at it with Anthony Black, his mechanics are clunky. He's even hesitant when shooting off the dribble. His touch around the rim and in the lane is uninspiring. And he shot just 71% from the free throw line last year on a decent sample size because, again, he's a good free throw generator. So I don't like that. And this limits him in the pick and roll because as much as I love Anthony Black as a pick and roll operator, it's going to be easy for NBA teams to simply go under screens because Anthony Black can't really shoot off the dribble. And he's legitimately hesitant. He lacks confidence in that regard. So that's what concerns me with Anthony Black. The shooting prospect doesn't look great. I think he's kind of always just going to be a below average shooter. And it's also going to really hinder him in some of his strongest points. Again, one of which being the pick and roll stuff. But his in-between scoring and touch, which I kind of already alluded to, just don't love it. I like his in-between game for drawing fouls, but in terms of a legitimate floater, legitimate runner, don't really love it. Don't love his touch. Don't think it was something he fully trusted last season either. And his finishing and slashing versatility for a guy who I did praise his finishing. I said he's a great contact finisher. He was a very good finisher at Arkansas last year, despite poor spacing. I still can poke holes in his game in this regard. As a slasher, he's very good as a straight line driver, but his left hand is lackluster. I don't love his left hand. I think too easily got poked away. Yeah, I just think his left hand's a little weak right now, so going left is a bit of an issue. He's not super bursty either, so it's not like he's blowing by guys in the first place. And he's not super crafty on top of it all. Like, when driving to the hoop, I don't see a ton of euros or in and outs or anything like that. It's just pretty much all straight line stuff. Not a lot of change of direction, anything like that. And because his touch isn't all that great, and he's really not all that crafty, he's kind of limited as a finisher as well. Like, he's not super dynamic in that regard. And his vertical testing was great at the combine. So people are going to think, well, he's an explosive above the rim finisher. Not really. Black's vertical when he was in open space at Arkansas was great. So if he's in the open court and transition, he can yam it down. It's like he can get up there. But for some reason, when he's in traffic and there's defenders in the paint and whatnot, he really doesn't get up all that high. And I legitimately just would not consider him an above the rim finisher, which is rare for somebody who tested as well as he did in the vertical. But it's worth noting that because for some reason, there's a big difference for Anthony Black. Kind of a weird scenario, I know. But the space creation really puts a bow on everything as to why I don't believe Anthony Black can be a lead guard in the NBA because he's limited as a shooter and teams kind of go under on screens. And because he's not this elite athlete with great burst or anything like that. And because his handle is good, but it's not Kyrie Irving or Darius Garland or anything like that, he's not really a great space creator. He's not somebody, a lot of his shots are just tough shots. He doesn't take a lot of mid-range shots, doesn't take a lot of threes, but when he does and it's off the dribble, it's typically not with like a ton of space. if you're leaning on him in isolation or whatnot to really create his own shot. And again, as I talked about getting to the rim, I think he's limited as a slasher. So Anthony Black is going to have some space creation issues as well. Now, the turnovers, this is to me a minor one. It's very, very minor. Anthony Black's feel for the game is just so high. He's only 19. But I thought he did have too many sloppy turnovers. Just, occasionally passes going away. Occasionally his processor was just a little late, or it just made the wrong read, or he's just getting the ball poked away because his left hand's still a little weak. Just those things. I think he'll clean it all up by the time he's a couple years into the league, but within his first year or two, it could create just a bit of trust issues with the coaching staff. It may limit him a little bit out of the gate. Just something to take note of. In his screen navigation, this is like the only negative I can point to about his defense. The screen navigation it was an issue. Teams would often target him. I know, like in the Baylor game, for example, Baylor just attacked him with screens, attacked him. And he struggled with it. He doesn't get skinny when he's tasked with the screen. When an opponent set a screen on Anthony Black, he often gets stuck up on them because he doesn't get skinny. And that's something that could easily be coached up. And I think with the engagement that Black plays with on that end, and how much he seems to care for it, and how good he is in every other regard, and the fact that it is a pretty coachable point, and he's got enough quickness, I think, to deal with these things, I'm not too concerned about it. But again, it's like early on in his career, it could be a bad habit, and it's something that you're going to have to coach out of him, and it could limit him a bit out of the gate. So the screen navigation is worth noting. It's like the only defensive negative for Anthony Black. So now let me get to my outro. What do I think about Anthony Black as a prospect? Right now, consensus views him as a lottery guy, a mid to late lottery guy. And that's pretty much where I'm at with Anthony Black. Pretty lockstep with it. I'm still early on in my process, so I haven't scouted as many guys as some other draft pundits out there. Just so busy with the NFL season and the NBA season. Just so many other things going on that this is like my NBA draft scouting pocket right now, and we're just starting to enter it, so bear with me. But Anthony Black, when I kind of do early rankings and I kind of project where he'll end up for me, mid to late lottery, pretty much lockstep with consensus on this one, which isn't the case for a lot of prospects. I tend to be a little controversial, but I do think people have the right idea here with Anthony Black. When I project an NBA role, again, I talked about how I don't think this is a lead guard in the NBA, and it's because of all the weaknesses I just talked about. I don't see the all-star upside with Anthony Black. With that being said, he can be a really good secondary / tertiary ball handler that kind of fills that connector archetype in the NBA. I think the Derek White, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, that mold in the NBA. Those guys who aren't quite primaries, they can't be primary guys, but they're high feel offensive players that can handle some ball handling responsibility. They read the floor really well. They're really good passers, and they just do a little bit of everything. And their off ball feels really good, even though at points in their careers, they haven't really been elite shooters. But their offensive feels so high. They do a little bit of everything. And then on the defensive end, he's going to be a monster. From day one, Anthony Black is going to be a very positive NBA defender. He's going to be really good in that regard. And if he can clean up the screen navigation, I could see a world one day where he's an all NBA defender, and it wouldn't shock me at all. And I'd be like, yeah, I could have seen that coming out of college. I don't know if that'll be the case. There's a lot of very good defenders in today's NBA, but that's absolutely in Anthony Black's range of outcomes. But again, at the very least, we're talking about a well above average defender from day one, off the jump. So Anthony Black, I think whoever drafts him is just going to get a really, really solid connector piece. They're going to be happy with that draft pick in 5 to 10 years. You're not going to get an all-star, but you're going to get a rock-solid producer for years to come. So that's my thoughts on Anthony Black. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, or if there's any other prospects you want me to do next, because I definitely plan on doing more of these. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the content we've got coming out. Plenty, especially as we head into the summer. I'm very, very excited. But my name's Aidan Maher. I'll see you guys next time.